We are the 18th of January. We are just about to start the Sundance Film Festival. I'm speaking with Claire Fowler, fresh from the Sundance Screenwriters Labs with your project Toad, one of a dozen of 4,000 submissions, just that alone getting into the labs. Congratulations. So you're from across the pond. You studied at Columbia University. You got a lot of shorts underneath your belt. You dabbled into a TV series recently. I read the log line. It feels like you're playing with the time element. It feels like you're dealing with trauma and the possibility of genre. It feels as if just by the log line itself feels that you might mix up genre. Is there any connection creatively to your previous material with this screenplay?
Oh my gosh, that's a really good question.
Do you have a twin brother?
I have a twin sister.
Okay.
I mean, of course, I feel like everything's connected. I feel like because everything is, I don't summon a project out of kind of cynicism. It's not like, oh, I think this is going to do really well at a festival. You know, it's everything that I do. It takes, as any filmmaker knows, it takes so much time and energy and commitment. You have to be really, really wedded to the idea and really fall in love with every one of your ideas. And if this has any connection, no, it's new for me because it's taking elements from my past, which I haven't really done before. And I'm not somebody who, I'm quite introverted, so I'm not particularly interested in putting myself on camera as I'm doing now. I'm not particularly interested in putting elements of my life on camera, but this comes from a youth theatre experience that I had, but more that other people that I knew in youth theatre when I was around 15, 16, that they had, and it was participating in a youth theatre programme in North Wales, which everyone said was very prestigious, which always makes me laugh because I always think there's nothing prestigious in North Wales. But it was a youth theatre residential course, and for around kids around the age of 15, 16, 17, 18, some people were even like 20 and 21 because they were trying to get into drama school, and sometimes it takes a while. So they were still doing youth theatre while I tried to get into drama school. And the year before I joined the youth theatre, an abuser had been the director of the youth theatre for 20 years, and he was finally unmasked and kicked out. And some of the people who had suffered abuse, they had siblings who were still in the youth theatre with me. And then many years later, some more people came forwards and accused him. And so it was just something that was so... It was an experience I had, but a bigger experience for other people around me, friends and people in my life and people in my community. And it just, when you have an experience and you don't realize it's going to be formative, that's one thing. And that's something that happens when you're very young and you're kind of like rushing through life and you're just kind of consuming things and you don't realize that some of the things that you're consuming are going to have a huge impact on you. So that's kind of one element of my story. And another element of my story is just kind of like the ripple effects of life and interactions and placing trust in the wrong organizations and in the wrong community. But there's also a lot of joy. There's a huge amount of joy in this community. So there's a lot of issues that kind of like brought together and tied in to the script. And the lab is all about, you know, finding like a through line for all of these ideas and issues and explorations.
As I mentioned before, you were selected for the labs, which is a big deal. What do you feel was the hook, line, and sinker element of your screenplay that when they received it, that was like the thing that really said, we want to invite you over there?
I think a lot of people who are involved in the lab had theatre experiences that they hadn't seen depicted in quite the way that I was depicting, and so I think that kind of resonated with a lot of people. And some of the themes that I'm talking about or discussing seem to me to be so profoundly British, like groups of kids getting together and just drinking way too much and profanity and hypersexualization. And I think some of the people in the Sundance Lab had experiences possibly in the States, but also in the UK as well, and they were like, oh yeah, like that resonates, I remember that, and I've seen that, and I haven't quite seen that depicted on screen before.
In terms of influences inside and outside of cinema, what are some ideas that I would find in your pitch deck? It could be actual films, it could be, I mean, in this case, it's coming from a personal place, maybe some Brit cinema, like some Andrea Arnold in there. What would be on the pages of your pitch deck?
Some of the films that I had to reference, it's unavoidable. One of them was The Tale, which was here many years ago, and that did a really amazing revelatory thing where it depicted a woman remembering a relationship that she was in and misremembering herself as much older and more mature than she actually was. And that was really profound for me.
Fox.
Yeah, that was really profound and really interesting. Stylistically, my film is very, very different. But, you know, when you're making a film about something, you still look at what's come before and what was successful, and that was an amazing moment. I think that anyone who's making a film about abuse is going to reference. The film Saint-Omer, because there is a trial element in my film, and it's so beautiful and understated. And I'm always going to reference European films because that was my first exposure to cinema in general. And I love how Saint-Omer just takes its time, and you're just watching, and there's just horror unfolding. And then you realize it's not just the horror of what this woman has done, but it's the horror of this system that she finds herself in, and that has possibly even turned her into this perpetrator, this abuser. Yeah.
And you have potential players already in place. I'm not talking about the cast, but is there any producers on board? Is there anybody that you want to put out there and say this is part of your team for this project?
So yeah, I have some producers on board, Emily Jouffroy and Camilla Hodel, and they're European. Emily is French and Camilla's from Scandinavia, and they're based in London. They went to the National Film and Television School, and they have a company called Protagonist. And they came on board with a 2-page treatment.
Okay.
Yeah, I was in London, I'd written this treatment. It was an idea that's been percolating in my head for a really long time. I'd started kind of writing it as a novel during the pandemic.
Wow.
Which was a real, yeah, it was interesting. It got a lot of ideas out there, you know, when you're just kind of like free-flowing and throwing ideas out there, and you kind of need to kind of write your way through an idea. That's what I was doing. And then I was like, what am I doing? I'm a visual filmmaker, and somehow I've got to figure this out as a film. So I wrote it out as a treatment, presented it to those guys last summer, so only about 6 months ago. And they knew me from different meetings and had read different scripts of mine that they liked, but for different reasons couldn't or didn't want to come on board. But this one, they came on board really early on.
Thank you so much for your time, Claire. I really appreciate it. And I imagine good luck with what might be a little bit of rewriting, perhaps? Do you go back
a lot of rewriting.
Okay. So they really they shredded you up a little bit at the labs.
I feel like everybody comes out of the lab thinking, oh my God, do I even have a story? Like, what? How did this even get in? But it's really good, because, you know, we speak to 5 individual mentors, and they're like 2-hour meetings. And after each meeting, all of the mentors get together and kind of compare notes and try and figure out what the person needs for the next meeting, so it's really bespoke and really tailored. So you're not going to get like the same note over and over again, and you might get some contradictory notes, but they're also aware that they're doing it because they talk and they want to compare notes about what our reactions are to the notes that we're getting. So they know if someone is going to be incredibly defensive about something, they're going to kind of like figure out how to.
That's really intuitive. That's really smart.
I've
like
never
building a little bit, right?
Yeah, I've never
Building
experienced
criticism.
anything like that. The fact that they actually speak to each other and really kind of structure a plan of what the next meeting is going to be is super amazing. But everybody does come out of it thinking, yeah, I have a lot of work, and I think we're all going to take a bit of a breath and kind of see what like lands, and then approach that. So maybe in a couple of weeks, we're all going to be furiously writing.
Go watch some movies first, and then go back to all these characters living in your head. Hey, this is Eric from IONCINEMA.com. If you want to support us, subscribe below. For more reviews, interviews, film festival coverage from Sundance, Cannes, Toronto, you want to check out these guys on this side.